You're listening to Emmy Award-winning host Jordan J. Adams.
This health topic is white hot, red hot, molten lava. It is the cutting edge of what's going on in alternative health and how we can all get well. Our guest is so special. I was fortunate to sit next to her at a PBS taping. Brenda Watson was doing a television show, and I was very fortunate to sit right next to Donna Schwenk. She's the creator and founder of Cultured Food Life. Donna, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Oh, it is my pleasure, Jordan. Thank you for having me.
13 years ago, your life changed in a dramatic way. What happened?
13 years ago, I was 41 years old, and I found myself pregnant with my third child, much to my surprise. And what happened was a series of events. I had to have my daughter early. They had to save my life, so they delivered her 7.5 weeks early. And I had diabetes, I had high blood pressure, I had a 4-pound preemie, and I was in a lot of trouble. When you're 41 and you have a baby, you have, I knew that by the time I was almost 60, she'd be, grown. But at the rate I was going and the way that I felt and the diseases that I was getting, I knew my life would be greatly reduced. And so I started searching for answers. And I was at a health food store one day, and I pulled two books off of a shelf and sat down in a chair because I was too tired to walk around the store. And one of the books fell open to this page, and it fell open to this page on kefir. Now, I had never heard of kefir. I didn't know what it was, but I was intrigued, so I was reading about it. And I picked up the other book, and it too opened to a page on kefir. And right at that moment, a store employee was walking by and said, "That is the most important book you will ever read. You need to pay attention." So I bought both those books. I went to the corner of the store, because now I was paying attention, and bought this stuff called kefir, which is a fermented drink similar to yogurt, and started giving it to my daughter and started drinking it. And in 3 weeks, my husband walked into the living room with my little girl and said, "Donna, Holly has gained 4 pounds in a month," which is a lot for a preemie. The color had come back in her cheeks. She was sleeping through the night. And I had noticed that I had started feeling better. And I, standing in the kitchen one day doing dishes, and I looked out the window at my bird feeder and found myself in the front yard filling them all up. Now, it's not a big deal to most people, but to me, I didn't give a rip about those birds a few months ago. They could get their own food. But I felt so good. Something had happened to me. There was a sense of well-being. There was a sense of joy. And I felt like the world had shifted. And I felt so good. My blood sugars were normal. My blood pressure was in the normal range. And I went on a mission to find out what this drink was that had changed me so dramatically and my daughter, Holly.
Yeah, because you had said you had had problems with your first 2 pregnancies. You were not feeling good. And then having a third at an older age really terrified you, and you almost kind of intuited that there were going to be problems. What were some of the health challenges you had? You mentioned a couple of them, but the kefir really addressed a lot of different health problems. Can you tell us what they were so we know what it did address?
Well, a lot of it too was, I had terrible high blood pressure, the preeclampsia, if you're familiar with that, with being pregnant. And it was so high that they had to, put me in the hospital with almost all of my pregnancies because my blood pressure is so high. Now that I'm older, I understand that when they put me in the hospital, they put me on a magnesium drip to get it down. Well, I didn't have any magnesium. I was struggling desperately to hang on to that. That's something I struggle with. And kefir is loaded with that. This special drink was loaded with it, but it helped my body absorb more of it. And it also works on an enzyme in the stomach that naturally lowers blood pressure. And I found that in some research later on after I had started drinking this drink and realized that when I drank it, my blood pressure lowered. And when I didn't drink it, it would go back up. And they said it works like an ACE inhibitor drug on an enzyme in the stomach to naturally do that. But it wasn't just that is what happened. It was also reduce the inflammation because I had gotten diabetes and it had come back after I'd got it when I was pregnant, but I had come back. And I have a lot of diabetes in my family. My sister's type 1, my niece is type 1, my dad was type 2. So it was a big problem for me. And everybody was on blood pressure medication in my family. And when I started realizing that I wanted to know why I had these problems, not just take a drug and mask it, There's a reason you have high blood pressure. Something's going on inside of you. And I started learning about all these different foods. And what's the coolest thing of all is the body is designed to heal you. And I just had to give it what it needed. And when I did, it didn't just change me physically, because my diabetes went away, my high blood pressure, I lost 45 pounds, all these things happened to me, but it changed me emotionally, because your gut is your second brain. And when you fix your gut, you fix everything.
Wow, that's powerful. And this is why I'm so excited to be talking with you. We are talking with Donna Schwenk. She is the creator and founder of Cultured Food Life. She saved, I think it's safe to say, you saved your health, but maybe even saved your life with this health protocol, and that is culturing foods. And we're talking about kefir in particular, some of the health conditions that it helps, amazingly. We're going to talk later on in the show about how to make kefir, but I wanted to sort of address this whole microbiome type of science that's out now. We're really realizing, you touched upon it just a second ago, about the wisdom that's in the gut. And tell me if I have these numbers right. We are 10 trillion cells of bacteria. Only 1% of that is bad. The rest is either neutral or helpful. Now, if my math is good here, if we're 10 trillion cells of bacteria, then bacteria outnumbers us by 100 to 1. Is that accurate?
Well, actually, it's 100 trillion cells
It's
of bacteria.
100 trillion cells.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
my God.
I know. It's just a little bit more.
Wow.
So it outnumbers the cells in the body 10 to 1. We are basically sacks of bacteria walking around. That's what we are.
We're not even human. It's like we're bacteria.
Oh.
The bacteria is actually humoring us. They're like,
Yes.
we're like the bacteria on the bacteria. We're
Yeah, because
not
it's
even
in you. It's in you. It's on you. It's around you. You go into a hotel room. I just read this big article of this, and you start colonizing the room with your bacteria within minutes. Isn't that something?
Wow.
I know. We all assimilate everybody. I mean, really,
Yeah, we're the
that's what's
Borg.
happening.
We're the Borg. You will be assimilated. So that's like, they're actually hosting us. We are actually more bacteria than we are human.
Yes, actually, absolutely.
That is amazing. I don't know what the ratios would be to our genes, but if it's to the cells, then it's like there's 1,000 bacteria to every one of us. And it's like, wow, that's amazing.
And we're not paying attention. All we talk about is the bad bacteria. Everybody's talking about antibiotics and antibacteria, this and that. And what they don't realize is that we are mostly good bacteria, and it's keeping us well. And we're killing it left and right. And we don't realize that good is always stronger than evil. But when you're constantly killing the good bacteria and the bad at the same time, then it starts to mutate and things get out of hand. And then you start seeing diseases creeping up. And that's what's happening in this day and age.
One of my big challenges, the reason I got into fitness and health and nutrition in the first place, was candidiasis that I'd gotten from a urinary tract infection. The doctor had prescribed antibiotics when in reality, the urinary tract infection is yeast. It's not bacteria. So he kept giving me stronger and stronger doses of the antibiotics when they didn't work. And what I found out, 15 years later, after 15 years of bad health, was he had wiped out all of my positive bacteria. And
Right.
I was a wreck. I had skin rashes, headaches, bloating.
Yep.
I felt like junk. I had arthritis. I was 26 years old with arthritis. And it wasn't until it's just like you, I walked into a health food store. I met a woman who was 174 years old. She was, bless her heart, sweetest little thing. Met her on the beach, and she had a little mom and pop health food store, and she walked me into it, and she taught me all about this stuff. And that was when I finally started regaining my health. But yeah, it's like, you have to learn it, you have to practice it, you have to try and see what works for you and what doesn't work. But this is cutting edge because of the intelligence that is in the gut, and it's regulating our health. It even I think on your website you'd said not only does it positive bacteria, positive biome repair our cells, but it actually makes serotonin.
Yeah. And the thing about that's cool, I actually just put this in my new book that's coming out next year, and they've done studies. They did studies on these prisoners, and they were aggressive, and they had disorders, and they'd found that they were lacking all these nutrients in their diet. And when they started adding these nutrients back to their diets, their moods changed, their behaviors changed, their emotions changed, which is what happened to me. I completely changed. I literally am not the same person I was back then. I was grouchy. I had a short fuse. And I have so much joy now. I drive people crazy. It is like, I can remember going to the grocery store and wanting to hug the guy that sacked my groceries because I felt grateful.
Wow.
And I didn't care before, but it was a sense of joy, but it's also a sense of love for other human beings. And it was just food that did this to me. It gave me something, kefir, the Turkish meaning means to feel good. And it did that for me. And so they've done studies now where they gave these women yogurt, and they watched, some of them got off their antidepressants, and they've got all these studies now about how effective it is on the brain chemistry. And it's not just about the body, which I love because we are body, mind, and soul. You know what I'm saying? And we've disconnected everything. We've got doctors for the body, and we've got, the mind is a separate science, but we're all those things. And who would have ever thought that food that I made sitting on my counter would teach me so much about myself. It changed everything for me because it did the work and I got the benefits. These little microbes in this food that I was eating and making changed everything for me.
That's so powerful. Give people your web address too, because there's a video of you telling your story on your splash page that is so awesome. I just sent it to my sister. What's the web address in case people want to look you up while we're doing the show? culturedfoodlife.com. culturedfoodlife.com.
Yeah.
And in it you talk about how cultured food turned everything around for you, and specifically kefir. For the people who might be watching this who are vegetarians or vegans and who have sworn off dairy, for good reasons. There's mucus issues, there's lactose issues. Is there any counterindications for kefir for people who have Candida or who are vegetarians and worried about mucus? And obviously, for the people who are vegetarians or vegans for spiritual reasons,
sure,
then there's nothing. We're not trying to say go do it. But for the people who are not doing dairy for health reasons, are there any counterindications for kefir?
Yes, coconut kefir is awesome.
Oh,
almond kefir is awesome.
Whoa.
That's so effective for Candida too. Coconut kefir. It's one of my favorite things to make. And it can be really delicious. And I teach people how to do that all the time. I have lots of recipes for that because I like it as well. I think it's got properties in coconut that you don't get in dairy. And kefir is 99% lactose free. So if you've got lactose problem, if it's made in dairy, it is 99%. And it's a completely different food. There's more vitamin C than orange juice. But it's so fabulous in coconut or almond. I've even made walnut kefir. You can do it in any non-dairy milk, and it works really great. It really does.
Are there any, I believe that it's Ayurveda, but I might be wrong, that talks about dairy being like a binding and it slowing down the flow of qi or slowing down blood. Does the fermentation process take away the negatives of dairy? Yes. We've heard the negatives of cheese. We've heard the negatives of milk. Does it take away the negatives by its fermentation process?
Yeah, it changes the food completely. First of all, it's a pre-digested food. And the sugar content goes down to 1. I mean, there's hardly any sugar in kefir. That sour taste you're tasting or tart taste that, like, for instance, you taste in yogurt, that's the bacteria that eats all of the sugars out of the milk or whatever you've put it in and makes probiotics from it. So you don't get any of the sugar, but it loads it with vitamin C and B vitamins. It makes it a pre-digested food. It reduces inflammation. It's food for bacteria in your gut. It's a colony in your gut. And my daughter was allergic to dairy, and she was 16. And this is another story of what happened. She was starting to get allergic to foods every week. She was getting more and more allergic to everything. And she would get up every morning. She never felt good, and it broke me. So I took her to the doctor, and they didn't know what was wrong with her. And they said, well, maybe we should take out her gallbladder. And she's 16. Do you know what I'm saying? And they didn't even know if it would help. And I was like, okay, I've had enough. So I went home, and I started feeding my daughter a cultured food at every meal, which was cultured vegetables, this special drink called kombucha tea, and then dairy, because she could handle, not dairy, I mean kefir. She could handle it. And I think I made it in goat's milk. And she began to thrive. Her stomach stopped hurting in a month. 3 months later, she was a different kid. And a year later, all of her food allergies, which were many, were completely gone. So I told my friends. And that just, everybody started getting better. Well, they just came out with a study that they found that kids with food allergies, what happens is they're given so many antibiotics that it kills a certain bacteria in the gut that has many strains among it. And that causes them to have food allergies. When they replace the bacteria back in, the food allergies went away.
Wow.
So I have proof.
Wow.
Isn't that
Well,
cool?
you know, it makes sense. It really makes sense that nature has been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, millions of years. It's pretty good at what it does. Our modern science, allopathic medicine, is what, 100, 150 years old? It's hit and miss. It's trying this, it's trying that. And unfortunately, it experiments on us. So
Right.
there's good times, like if I get in a car accident and my rib is sticking out of my chest, I want an allopathic doctor who knows how to stick my rib back in my chest and stop the bleeding and get my
Exactly.
blood pressure down and save my life. God bless those guys who learn how to do it.
Yes.
But when it comes to prevention, and when it comes to longevity, when it comes to real health and nutrition, these guys know nothing. They get like 2 weeks of
2 weeks. My
nutrition
brother-in-law's.
in 8 years of school. They get two
Yeah,
weeks of nutrition.
my brother-in-law's a doctor, and he told me, Donna, we only get 2 weeks.
It's
We can't,
astounding. It's
because
astounding.
they don't think that it connects.
Right.
You know, they
Right.
don't. It's not really their fault. It's just our society has
Not
just
their fault.
disconnected.
Yeah, it's not their fault. They're good meaning. They're well meaning. They work their butts off, and I'm glad they're there. But
Me too.
you know, we need to get the information out about this, because what if you had said yes to that person who had the white lab coat and you had had your daughter take her gallbladder out? Who knows what that would have done to her? They took my appendix out when I was in 1976. I had stomach pain in school. By the time I got to the hospital, I didn't even have any pain anymore. So they checked me out, and the doctor comes into the room. He said, everything checks out okay, but we better take him out to play it safe, because he didn't know what the pain was earlier, and he said to play it safe. So what do you think, as a 15-year-old, and my dad respects doctors immeasurably.
Yeah, they're gods. to
They're
many people.
gods,
Yeah.
especially in the 70s. They were gods. So
Yeah.
all he hears is, let's play it safe. So they put me under general anesthesia, which is dangerous in and of itself. They take out something that they don't know what it does for us, but I'm pretty sure it probably has some function, just because we don't
They know what
what
it does. Did you
What?
know they
No.
found out what it does?
What?
It holds good bacteria for when you get basically like diarrhea. It will flood the colon again with good bacteria. So it's a holder for good bacteria. How cool is that?
Wow. Wow.
Serious. That's what it does. It just holds the good bacteria so that if you get any kind of a flu or virus where you're having a lot of diarrhea, it will flood the body again with it, so it'll protect it.
See,
And they didn't think it was.
nature's pretty good. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's done pretty well for the billion years before we weren't here. It's done pretty well for itself. It's a pretty good evolver. It evolves some pretty cool machines.
Well, how
And-
long have you heard that it didn't do anything?
Oh
It
my
was
gosh!
unused
Right up
organ.
until now.
Yeah. Yeah.
You were
it
the one who
came
just
out
told me
with
what it did. I had no idea what it did. And now they've taken it from me, so now I have to keep flooding myself with positives all the time. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the beginning of the Candida issue for me, because, of course, they give you a ton of antibiotics after your operation. So they
Right.
take out my appendix, they give me a ton of antibiotics, and then I get, then 4 years later, I get a urinary tract infection. They flood me again for 2 years. They flood me with antibiotics.
Oh.
Yeah, and it was always me. I was the head case who kept coming in, and boy, we can't fix this guy. There must be something wrong with him mentally. God forbid it was something they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
well-meaning, but they do have some of the allopathic guys are pretty arrogant. They don't. Back in the day, they didn't listen to your feedback. Now they're much more. It's much more collaborative. They want active patients because they can only see you for 10 or 15 minutes. So they really want you to be active.
Yeah.
But, that's neither here nor there. Our job is to stay positive and to keep getting the good message out about all the different things, the blood sugar regulation, ulcers, not needing to take antacids anymore. There's pages of stuff that cultured foods do for you.
Oh, yeah. And ulcers are one of the things. I met a lady that had a little 3-month-old baby that had 20 ulcers, and the doctors couldn't fix it. And it's been proven that ulcers are caused by a bacteria that's harmful. And when she started drinking kefir after they tried every medication, they all went away, and very quickly, like in a few months. All of these foods, the wonderful thing about it is that all these foods seem to know what to do. Each one of them has different bacteria in them that are good for you, but they also have what we call good yeast. And all we ever hear about is bad yeast, is Candida. But like one of the best probiotics worldwide is called Saccharomyces boulardii. And it is got 30 years of research behind it. And what it does in the body when you take it is phenomenal. And it's abundant in cultured foods.
Wow.
And so
Wow.
it's really important. Mm-hmm.
Donna, where do you fall down on the nutritional protocol debate? I've had a lot of people on the show, and I am so pliable. I have people who are vegetarian, that very much into the raw vegan lifestyle, and by the time I'm done talking with them, I'm converted. I'm a vegan. And then I'll have someone who's a really strong paleo person on, an MD or a PhD, and at the end of that conversation, I'm a converted paleo. The science seems to be so strong in both directions. Where does the cultured food movement come down in this debate?
The one thing I love about cultured foods is you can add them to any diet. You can be a raw foodist, you can be a vegetarian, you can be a vegan, you can be a paleo. It does not matter. These foods work with every diet. That's what I love about them, because I didn't have to tell anybody what to eat. The thing about it is, we all need our own journeys. I've tried so many diets. It's ridiculous. I've just, I took out whole food groups, I put them back in, I took them, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I do know what you're saying, yes.
I needed that journey though, Jordan. It taught me things. I needed to learn all those different things because each diet taught me something new. And then it kind of came to a crescendo when I found cultured foods and realized that there was value in everything. And these foods you could add to any diet, and you don't need a lot. We're talking a spoonful of cultured vegetables with a meal, or 4 ounces of, kombucha tea, or, a little bit of kefir for breakfast, and, you're good. So.
Well, I got into the kombucha tea thing. It's funny you brought that up. I was doing a seva, a selfless service at Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in the Berkshire Mountains in '94, and it was a kombucha tea craze went through the residents there. There was about 800 of us, and I was always freaked out about it because I've always been battling Candida, and it's so much sugar. You put so much sugar in this mushroom or this culture. And it always tasted sweet to me, and I couldn't psychologically make myself do it. But is kombucha a good protocol for people who are dealing, say, with diabetes or inflammation or Candida?
Well, if it was sweet tasting, then you didn't make it properly, because it should never taste sweet. It should taste tart, because then you know that the sugars have been eaten by the bacteria, and then they make it bubbly, which is kind of cool. But it's very good as long as it's not sweet, because then you know it's not been converted. And it has that good yeast I'm talking about, the Saccharomyces boulardii. And I have a sister that was having a lot of trouble with really chronic diarrhea, and she started drinking that. And after, her husband was a doctor too. So after about 2-3 years, she was able to just, she'd been trying everything for 2-3 years, and she started drinking that within a few days. She didn't need anything anymore. Medication, now she's a convert and drinks it every day. And I've seen it get rid of all kinds of things. The cool thing about it, though, is that this good yeast that's in this tea acts like inside the body. It will attract bad bacteria to it. And the bad bacteria is attracted to it, and then it kills it. It shoots at it.
That was the thing. You blew my mind. I don't know if it was your book or your website, but I was reading, you were talking about these good guys come in and they literally have a shootout at the OK Corral with the Candida, and they're shooting their poisons at each other, trying to wipe each other because they're battling for turf.
Right, because one wants to dominate. You're never going to get completely rid of Candida, and actually you need a little bit of it. But you want balance. It's when something gets out of balance, and everything gets out of balance when we take too many antibiotics. But the really cool thing about this good bacteria is it can't be killed by antibiotics because it's a yeast. It's a probiotic yeast, and we need those too. And it only lasts in the body 2 or 3 days, but it is mighty. It is one of the most powerful things for IBS, for gut problems. They use it in hospitals worldwide as the #1 probiotic that you can even buy in supplement form. And the story behind it's very, very interesting. But It's in two. We need good yeast and good bacteria, and then you can even heat it and you can't kill it. And
Wow.
most bacteria is killed by heat, but this is not because it's the yeast.
Is this the one you got in the kombucha tea? Is that how you get that particular
Yeah,
strain?
yeah.
Is that in the
But it only lasts in
kefir
the
as
body
well?
a couple of days.
Does it get,
So it only lasts. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Is that in the kefir too?
It can be. It just depends on what kind of culture you get. Most of the time, it's just in
Kombucha.
the kombucha. Yeah, but I actually have seen it now being put in some of the powder cultures that make kefir. So in some of them, you can get it, which is powerful. It's very cool when you start getting into. I'm the only crazy that lays in bed at night and thinks of the names of bacteria. So I just think it's cool.
Oh, I love this stuff. I trust that there's a lot of people listening to this who love it too because you're helping people. This is a real lifesaver for a lot of people. We are talking with Donna Schwenk. She is the creator and founder of Cultured Food Life. Give us that website again, Donna.
Culturedfoodlife.com.
Culturedfoodlife.com. Let's talk a little bit about another hot subject that's out there, and that's GMOs, genetically modified organisms. Monsanto is taking a lot of heat, which I feel is justified in that they are manipulating the genes of our food. And to make it worse, when they're altered genetically, modified seeds blow into an organic farm, the organic guy gets sued because they act like he's infringing on their patent. I would just be very curious how the fermentation process, can the fermentation process make a genetically modified food safe?
One of the really cool things about cultured vegetables, there's a certain bacteria in there. It's called Plantarum, Lactobacillus plantarum. And it actually removes pesticides
Wow.
from non-organic foods. Now, changing the GMO structure, they haven't discovered that yet, and I don't know for sure about that. But what it does do is basically, it's kind of like the story of the phoenix, where the food changes so dramatically through the fermentation part that it's actually a new food. And so you get benefits from this. You get, rid of pesticides, harmful chemicals, and it does it in all of the foods when it does this. That it really makes, for instance, it changes dairy, it changes vegetables. It's safer than eating raw foods. That's what's so wonderful about it. Because when you have that much good bacteria in something, it dominates, controls the environment, preserves the food, and they can last like 9 months in your fridge. And when you eat it, it preserves you and makes you live longer.
This is so important. And when you look at some of the statistics, some studies have our food, our crops, laced with as much as 37% of our crops laced with antibiotics. When you look at what Monsanto's doing, they have now have some studies out that are showing that the gut flora from from the genetically modified foods, the flora is actually producing Roundup in the gut.
Yes, I've seen that too. And I actually believe that because I think that that's why the body's struggling so much. Everything we do is so different from what we did 100 years ago. Do you know what I'm saying? Even the way, like for instance, bread, wheat and gluten are like the evil empire right now. But let me explain something about that. When years ago, before genetically modified crops, they would take the grains in the fields and they would plant them. And they would use a combine machine to take the seeds off. And that's what we do right now is they take the seeds off right away. Well, years ago, they would cut them and put them in sheaths. You ever seen the sheaths of grain?
Yes.
And they'd sit them in the fields and the dew would sprout those grains. And when they sprouted the grains, you were adding lactobacillus into the grains, changing the structure of the grain itself and turning that starch into a vegetable. And that's the government saying that, not me. It changes it from a starch, but it's sprouted. So then they used these sourdough cultures to rise their bread, but they took 2 sets of bakers to do it because it would take 7 hours for the bread to rise. So fast forward many years, but that changed the bread too when they did that. When they added cultures to rise the bread, which were naturally loaded with good bacteria, it completely changes the structure of the bread. It reduces the gluten. It gets rid of the phthalates that cause all the problems in our guts and reduces the enzyme inhibitors. Well, now they got the instant yeast, which just wreak havoc on our body, but rise the bread in an hour and a half, and got rid of all those workers, made it convenient. They don't sprout the grains. The grains are automatically taken off. Everything about that food has changed, and we think it's the food. but it's not the food. It's what we've done to the food. And the fact that we don't do it the way we used to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, not only does it make sense, but it is cutting edge because, as you said, gluten and all of the allergies and intolerances to it is that another one of those, red hot topics that's out there right now. I go into a grocery store, just a generic grocery store, and you see anti-gluten sections now. And I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
in this type of store, even in this type of store, there's anti-gluten. So it's a hot topic, but it's like you said, it's not necessarily the wheat. If the wheat is sprouted, it could be very nutritious.
Yeah, because my daughter was extremely allergic to wheat and gluten and all those problems. She had terrible problems with that. But when I made sprouted breads and used sourdough starters, she thrived. And I was so shocked by that and then I saw other people doing that, and it could change everything that we think we know, because what we tend to do is we take a food and then we throw it out because we think it's bad. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But like, for instance, our milk has changed dramatically. I mean, the cows are given antibiotics. The cows are given hormones to make them bigger and produce more milk. And do you know what I'm saying? Everything that we've done to the foods, and we've done it to vegetables. We load them with pesticides and we genetically modify things. And do you know what I'm saying? Everything we're doing, we're changing the way that it used to be made. And so it's not necessarily the food. It's the crazy profitability and that we want to get food to people in a day, truck it and tractors. When people were going to farmers and making their own foods and going to neighborhood things, nobody had these problems.
And what's so crazy, I'm sure you've seen the video of in California the government sending in these jackboot cops they look like they were in the military. They had all their guns drawn to raid a dairy.
I know. I saw it. Raw milk dairy. Yeah.
Unreal. Because the whole point of the raw milk, yes, the pasteurization was an important step in our understanding. Yes, it's saved millions of lives, and that's great. That was one particular way to get the bad bacteria out. Wiping out everything, right?
Yeah, well, that was during the war when the men went to work, and so the factories were having a hard time keeping the milk the way it should be, because most of the people were gone that ran it. So they had disease and it scared people. And so they did that to protect themselves. But then they carried it because it made the milk last forever on the shelf. Like, for instance, raw milk will sour on your counter. Pasteurized milk rots because there's nothing. And whenever you and so in the war, this is really cool. In the war, they had to figure out how to get food to the soldiers. So they had to take out all the bacteria, and they had to take anything that bacteria wanted to eat. They had to take it out because that would make it go bad. And they had to take out all the enzymes, and they had to shrink wrap it or put it in a can. And so they took out all the nutrients so they could preserve it to get it to the guys on the front. And so, now they've taken out of everything. So it's, so much of our food isn't fresh or raw because God forbid it didn't last 9 months on a shelf. Do you know what I'm saying? Everybody wants. I mean, I grew up in the era of TV dinners. I thought that was the coolest thing ever when I was a little kid. Do you know what I mean? We thought that was the greatest invention ever. SpaghettiOs in a can? Oh my God. I look back. That's how I grew up.
Oh, that's what I lived on. I'm the same age as you. That was what we were eating. We were eating TV dinners and SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, we didn't know it was going to do this to us. But you put SpaghettiOs in a can in your body, and your body's going to be like, what is this? But you give it an apple, you can't overeat apples. You can eat an entire bag of potato chips, but you can't eat an entire bag of apples. Your body won't let you.
Yeah. So I think it bears repeating what you said about the milk. Put 2 different gallon milk jugs on a table. The raw milk will sour and become even better for you. It'll ferment. It'll become even better for you. They
call it clabber.
Clabber?
They call it clabber. Uh-huh.
What is that?
Clabber. They call clabber milk, sour milk, clabber milk.
Which is basically like a yogurt, right?
Yeah, but it's more thin.
Oh, okay. It's kind of like a kefir, just kind of like a thick, rich type of a...
Yeah, real sour, like buttermilk.
Oh, okay. But the pasteurized milk will rot and become toxic.
Right.
That tells you right there. I mean, nothing wrong with pasteurization. It did what it did, but is there a better way to protect that milk and get the dangerous stuff out of it? There might even be a better way. And that's what we need, not my... This show is to inform people there is a better way. This by fermenting it. The positive bacteria makes it safe, and makes
You
it good
can't,
for you.
yeah, it can't, it keeps pathogens out. There's no way for okay, this is a cool story. Okay. It is scientifically impossible for botulism to happen in cultured foods, cultured vegetables, cultured.
Wow.
And the reason that is, and this is science, is that when the only bacteria that can survive heat is botulism. But that means you have to kill all the other bacteria with heat to kill them so that botulism can grow. And then you have to can it and get rid of the air, and that's how botulism happens. You don't do any of those things when you make cultured foods. And so the good bacteria control the environment and never even let botulism get a foothold because they're so much stronger than botulism.
Wow.
You'd have to heat them up. So we actually did it to ourselves. It's scientifically impossible. It's safer than raw foods because raw foods could have things like, you've seen the spinach when they got that, was it E. coli or whatever was on that?
Yes.
You can't get that with cultured foods because the other bacteria control it and keep it away. Isn't that cool?
So for people who are getting fired up right now, and I'm guessing there's a bunch of them, most people are familiar with yogurt. Maybe some people are familiar with kefir. Quite a few people are familiar with sauerkraut and maybe even kimchi. But that is probably the extent of the list, what most people would think are available in the fermented space for fermented cultured foods. But when I went to your website, I was really amazed at how many different types of dishes you could have. Like the thought of even like when you just said, a fermented coconut, cultured coconut milk. I didn't know you could do that. How many dishes are there? And is it possible to tweak the flavor? Can you make different flavors? And do they all have to be sour?
No, I make all kinds. I make desserts and breakfasts, and I made an apple walnut dip yesterday for my husband, who did not save me any. He ate the whole thing, so it was delicious. And it's just, I chopped it all up and put it all in a bowl. And there's like a breakfast pudding I make. There's all kinds of dishes with the cultured vegetables that you can roll up and put in sandwiches or make salad dressings. I mean, there is desserts. I make all kinds of desserts. I make kefir ice cream so much at my house, and I usually use stevia. I don't use sugar because I don't do well with the sugar, and everybody loves what I make. And it's just fruit and kefir and, all kinds of delicious coconut milk. And oh man, you talk about good. It's delicious.
Hey, you can't go. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Donna.
No, and I have like 100 recipes in my book, but I have hundreds on my website as well. So there's tons of recipes for people.
You
Every
brought up fruit and fermenting fruit, and of course the most famous one probably is wine. But for the people who don't want to drink or don't want sugars or certainly don't want to raise their blood alcohol levels, is there a process where you could ferment fruit and get all of the benefits of like for example with red wine with resveratrol and like there are just so many good things that resveratrol do for you. Is there a way to ferment fruit and take the sugars out but not get alcohols?
Well, that is one of the things that happens. Yes, it does. Fruit turns into alcohol, but the longer you ferment it, the less alcohol you get. I have something called kefir soda, which is like soda pop, but it's made with kefir. And so the sugars are gone. And in the beginning, as the fruit is fermenting in the kefir sodas, the alcohol content goes a little bit, not high, but there's a little bit there. But as it continues to ferment, it goes away. Because that makes it just starts to negate.
It eats the alcohol? The good bacteria eats the alcohol?
Well, it doesn't necessarily eat it. It just diminishes. It just doesn't...
vaporizes maybe? Or
yeah, I'm not sure how that works actually.
Yeah.
But it does that. You can even ferment fruit. And I have recipes where you make, fermented fruits and jams, and you get a lot less sugar. And that flavor is still there, but you're not getting all the sugars in it.
Because that's a real big one, as you know, is the sugars for people who are diabetic or have
Yes.
Candida or inflammation.
Right.
So it's amazing to me to hear that you can get different flavors,
Oh, yeah.
and it still has all of the benefits of a fermented product.
Yeah, and the nice thing about it too is that as you eat these foods, for instance, vegetables and fruits, you ever heard about fiber and how good it was for you? Well, the reason fiber is so good for you is that your body doesn't digest it. You don't get any calories from it, but your bacteria does. Your bacteria, it's food for your bacteria. Fruits and vegetables they're prebiotics. they make your good bacteria grow. So all this time that we've been eating all these fruits and vegetables, thinking it's so good for us, and actually resveratrol too, in the wine, they found out it's the bacteria in wine that's so good for you, not the resveratrol. Resveratrol is good for you, but it's the bacteria that's helping your heart and everything else. And the prebiotics in fruits and vegetables are what's making those so powerful, because our bodies can't get those fibers, but our bacteria does, and it creates a whole world inside of us that's good for us.
You know, it's funny. You just created the image of the bacteria saying, hey, you know, we're going to let you live because we need you. We need you. You're our host, and we need you to walk around and get stuff. So we're going to let you live, but you got to give us the right stuff. And if you give us the right stuff, we'll let you live. But it's almost like, you know, it's invasion of the body snatchers. Like they've got us, you know, and it's like, we'll let you live. We'll let you live a nice, happy, healthy life. Just make sure you take good care of us.
They're little, but they're mighty.
Well, this has been such a treat. Is there anything anything else that we didn't touch upon? Because there's so much here that I know I only scratched the surface.
Well, it can be a little overwhelming to people because they think it's hard, but it's not hard. It's just new. And I have free ebooks, startup guides to help you understand it, get you started on my website, so you don't feel intimidated. Or I even have a way for you just to go try the foods at a store to see if you like them. Because if I make it easy, like it was for me, then you'll do it. Because the problem is everybody wants convenience now, and that's me included. But these foods are so satisfying. You don't eat as much. You don't need as much food because they're so nutrient dense that honestly, they really change your diet. They do it for you because you feel so good when you eat them. You don't want to go back to that old life. That's what happened to me. They were like little personal trainers. When I didn't eat them, I didn't feel as good. And I didn't want to go back to the person that I was. So I kept eating them. And then fast forward many years.
Wow. Very powerful. I can really attest to who Donna is as a person, and I can attest to, if you go to her website, you're going to really be blown away at all the different recipes, and especially that video of you on the front page. Are a lot of the recipes done with video so people can actually watch, like how to mix and what to do and how long each one, you know, should ferment and that kind of thing?
Yes, I have a membership site. Then I have a lot of free videos too, and I have a lot of step-by-step pictures. And yeah, there's a lot. There's stuff for everybody. Everybody can find help there. So I've made it that way. I think I just added a new video just last week, and guys, I don't do anything hard because I don't have time anymore either.
Yeah,
and I was too sick before. I didn't want to do it because I felt so sick. I didn't want to do anything. So these foods are a product of my life. What I needed to make them easy, and I've made it easy for you because I want you to feel what I feel. If everybody could go from where I was to how I feel now, it would change the world. Everybody would get hugged. They would, because the joy, you can't control the joy. It spills out of you. When you feel good, you do good. That's what happens. I went from laying on the couch, feeling so bad and watching documentaries about the people changing their lives, and I didn't know how to do it, and I would bawl my eyes out, to feeling so good that I started a website, authored 3 cookbooks, make videos. Who does that? Wasn't me.
Who does it is Donna Schwenk. That's who does it.
I had no intention on doing any of that, you know, and that's what you find your path when you feel good. You make the world a better place because when you're happy, you make other people happy, and it's just a wonderful way to live.
We have been talking with Donna Schwenk, the creator and founder of Cultured Food Life. You can see her at culturedfoodlife.com. Thank you for all the good work you're doing, Donna, in the world.
I appreciate you, Jordan.
Thank you so much. Well, I am Jordan Adams. I will see you next time, and thanks for joining us in our quest to go straight at life, clear-headed and shredded. We'll see you next time.
For our full schedule of fights on the NBC Sports Network, CW and ABC affiliates, visit UnitedFightAlliance.com. United Fight Alliance. United we fight.